I'm going to be using the end set to cut a bouquet or a festoon of flowers, and this is a particular gun in which the background will be all fine English scroll, and then there'll be areas that are filled with the flowers, and there won't be the border of empty space around it. It's going to be just contiguous with the English scroll going in and behind, and we'll shade all around the bouquets of flowers. I'm using a 100-degree graver, which is what I normally use for English scroll. And what I'm going to demonstrate though is cutting slow, and I have a long stroke length, so I get the progress marks in the cuts, because it really adds something to this kind of engraving. There's something about those progress marks that change the whole look overall. It's subtle, but if you look at something that's been cut with it, normally from hammer and chisel, and one that hasn't, and put them side by side, there's a difference there. It just has something to do with the way it appears. Plus, with something like this, which is very organic, it's nice to have a not perfectly smooth border outline of your subject. So you can see that although I'm cutting at a slow stroke speed, each hit, if you will, advances the tool quite some distance. So you're really not, the pace is actually not slow when you get going. And you can see that when I'm doing this kind of cutting, I never try to make everything perfect. It really looks much better when it's finished if it's a little bit more organic, if you will. If you want to say rough, you can say rough, but it's really more than that. So I'll zoom in a little bit here, and you want to have a little bit of variation in the line width. You don't want it to, you can start out with a fine line and then, of course, get heavier, but then you want it to get heavier and lighter in different places. So you can see the cut marks or the progress marks that are made. And then when we zoom back, of course, it's not like something that you can see clearly, not on something this small, but again, it's that overall look or effect that it produces. So I'll do a little bit more here. Also, when I'm doing this kind of cutting, I try to kind of mimic hammer and chisel a little bit in that they cut a lot more. Nowadays we put a lot more pointed areas and stuff to our leaf structures. They kind of just came in and made kind of these sweep cuts or these hooks and stuff because, I think it was just faster and easier. Now, one thing that you can do on the centers of these flowers is you don't have to cut an outline like I'm doing here. You could just leave it drawn and, have your shade lines come in and stop and let that become the, the center. But that's, a little bit more work, and, for this kind of job, if I was doing a Bellino scene or something, I definitely would do that. But for this, I find it just fine to go ahead and cut the outline and then shade to it afterwards. Now when you go to shade this, part of what's going to make the whole thing come alive and give it even more form will be how you do the shade lines. Again, for a fast type of work that, kind of a production job, they would just come in and just put straight lines. You can give it a lot more feeling of form by putting a little bit of curve into your shade lines. And of course here we would shade coming back under. So if I just go straight, that's going to look fine, but if I bring it like this, just a slight curve, and don't try to make every line perfectly the same length. It'll have a much better, more natural look if you make some longer, some shorter, and go back to some longer again. It'll look a lot nicer when you get finished with it. But just something small like this can make a difference. You can even leave an area there and then shade right over the edge here so that it gives it a little more perspective. So that's probably how I would shade one, something like that. And whether you want to do faster, quick lines, it's up to you. Or if you want to, put a lot more lines in, you can do that as well. Again, always think about the overall size of something, and the problem with working under the microscope that I see that a lot of people have is that they tend to overdo it in the magnification, and it's really not necessary. So.